Pop my Zen in. I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a guy who likes Zen. But a few months ago, I made a video breaking down the class action RICO lawsuit against OnlyFans and a handful of big agencies filed by who I called the Goon Squad, a collection of disgruntled porn addicts suing OnlyFans for everything from wire fraud to racketeering. These are major charges that carry fat penalties, and if any of them made it to trial, there was a good chance that OFM as we know it would be over, as it would make third-party chatting, the entire backbone of our industry, crumble. Understandably, a lot of people panicked. Agency owners were asking me if they needed to move to Dubai or liquidate their assets. Creators were asking me if they needed to hire lawyers preemptively or they were going to get sued too. Now, in that previous video, I told everybody to calm down. I predicted that the claims were massively inflated, that the legal theories were extremely weak, and that this case was unlikely to ever see a day in court, but that it would still probably take a year or two to shake out. Well, there have been some major changes to this case since then. So I'm going to do a postmortem on my own analysis. I'm going to tell you exactly what I got right, what I got wrong, and most importantly, how this update to the case might impact your business. If you're an agency owner, a model, or just someone following the OnlyFans industry, you need to understand what just happened because it might just dictate the future of OFM. I'm going to caveat all of this with, I'm not an attorney, and this video is not legal advice. The information shared here is based on publicly available sources and is accurate to the best of my knowledge at the time of recording. Any discussion of potential outcomes is my opinion, not a prediction. And if you need legal guidance, please consult a qualified lawyer licensed in your jurisdiction and not a masked YouTuber who teaches people how to extract money from masturbators on Instagram. Before I get into it, if you are an OnlyFans agency owner, a model, a fan, or any other kind of professional in the digital intimacy industry, hit that subscribe button. This channel is the single best source on YouTube for news, guides, and interviews with thought leaders in the OnlyFans and digital intimacy ecosystem. And our goal is to provide the best content for entrepreneurs in this space, bar none. On to the video. I'll save the bad news for the last section. Let's talk good news first. As I said, recent court filings and rulings from mid-December had a huge impact on this case. The good news is, those rulings are overwhelmingly in our favor. The judge has spoken, fines have been levied, and significant portions of the lawsuit have been completely thrown out. In my previous breakdown, I mentioned a development where the defense, OnlyFans and the agencies, accused the plaintiffs of using AI to write their legal briefs. And, as it turns out, this was 100% true, and the plaintiff's counsel is even more incompetent than I previously imagined. Higgins Berman, the law firm representing the subscribers, again, we'll call them the Goon Squad, has been fined by the judge. It's not unusual in cases like this for big firms to contract out grunt work, and unfortunately for Higgins Berman, they made a very poor decision on their contractors. One of their co-counsel, one Celeste Boyd, used ChatGPT to draft opposition to motions to dismiss, and failed to check if the case law referenced by ChatGPT was real. Now, using AI isn't illegal. I use AI, you use AI. But as it turns out, when you're a lawyer in a federal courtroom, you can't use AI to invent case law that doesn't exist. The hallucinations I referenced in my last video were not minor typos. They were fully fabricated legal precedents that got submitted to the court. The judge in this case, the Honorable Fred Slaughter, didn't just slap the plaintiff on the wrist, he formally sanctioned them. Moreover, he refused to grant their request to withdraw the tainted filings to fix them. This is a massive blow to the plaintiff's credibility and a huge foothold for the defense to poke all kinds of holes in every future filing. It turns out, lying to a federal judge, even by accident, is frowned upon legally. So here's what I got right. I predicted that this hallucination issue would be a major stumbling block for the Goon Squad, and it was. This is a straight-up Looney Tunes mistake in a case where the plaintiff is trying to paint OnlyFans as an organized crime syndicate. Imagine that you sue someone who scammed you, and your lawyer showed up to court and took a big stinky shit in his pants in the middle of presenting your case, and you will have some sense for how utterly humiliating this is for the plaintiffs. Mistakes like this signal to the judge that the plaintiffs were just throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck, rather than building meticulous legal arguments required for claims of this seriousness, and that's exactly what led to the big news. Now, the biggest news by far is what's happened to the RICO and Wiretap Act claims. In my original analysis, I explained that the plaintiffs were trying to use the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO, to claim that OnlyFans and the agencies were operating like a mafia enterprise. They claimed that the deceptive chatting was wire fraud, and the coordination between OF and agencies constituted a criminal enterprise. I told you that this was hilarious, and almost certainly going to be dismissed, because the standards for RICO are incredibly high. If you're not familiar, these are laws that were invented to stop organized crime, literal mafias, like in The Godfather. You have to prove a specific structure exists solely for the purpose of committing crime, in this case, fraud, separate from the normal course of business. And as of December 12, 2025, the court has dismissed the key RICO claims. The judge essentially looked at the RICO theory and said, you cannot simply point to a platform, in this case OnlyFans, and its users, agencies, doing business together and call it a criminal racketeering enterprise just because the 18-year-old goth baddie you were chatting with turned out to be a middle-aged Pakistani man. And that's even assuming that OF is coordinating with agencies, which I personally don't believe that they are. Similarly, the claims regarding the Wiretap Act, the idea that the agencies were intercepting communications illegally, were also dismissed. The court system, generally speaking, assumes that consumers are adults who read contracts as opposed to brain-dead chronic masturbators. As I pointed out previously, the OnlyFans Terms of Service explicitly states the fan acknowledges that third parties may assist creators in operating their accounts and in creator interactions. The fan consents to the terms of service, and the agency is acting as the creator's agent. The court found the plaintiffs' arguments here to be insufficient to support the broad conspiracy they alleged. The plaintiffs tried to argue around this. They tried to say, yeah, but we didn't think that meant chatters, and the judge did not find that compelling. Wiretap was probably the scariest charge for OFM, because if this went to trial and the Goon Squad won, it would effectively make chatting illegal in the United States, which would destroy the industry as we know. But it's looking like the two scariest charges are behind us. Now, for the bad news. I was wrong about something. The timeline. I predicted that this would take a year or two to resolve, and I was way off. In a good way. In the 3 months since I made that first video, the judge moved very quickly to trim the fat from this case. I expected the plaintiffs to put up a slightly better fight regarding the enterprise definition, but the dismissal suggests that their initial filing was even weaker than I gave it credit for. Now, this doesn't mean that the entire lawsuit is over, but it does mean that the dangerous industry-ending parts are dead. The judge has allowed the plaintiffs to file an amended complaint with a limited path forward, which likely refers to much smaller, more specific claims, perhaps related to specific instances of fraud or state-level consumer protection laws. Basically, the industry is safe. The Goon Squad lost. It's not over, but it's pretty over. Basically, the judge said, you can't sue them for being a mafia, and you can't sue them for wiretapping. But if you can prove that specific guys were lied to and lost money, you might have a small claims case there. Try again. My prediction for the future of this case is as follows. The plaintiffs have submitted amended filings as of January 2nd, which I unfortunately was not able to access. But given that they've already been fined for using AI to cheat on their homework, and the biggest parts of their case have been thrown out entirely, the defendants will eventually likely settle for a relatively small, undisclosed amount to make the lawyers go away. Or the case will be dismissed entirely with prejudice. We will not see a massive trial, we will not be shutting down chatting operations, and OnlyFans management is safe. So, with this new information, is there anything that you as a business need to do? If you want to exercise an abundance of caution, check out the tips I gave at the end of my previous video. I'll link it in the description for you. But in reality, now that the RICO and wiretap charges have been tossed, it sets a very strong precedent that is unlikely to be tested again. The Goon Squad has almost certainly spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for this case, and they have absolutely nothing to show for it. This will be extremely discouraging to potential future plaintiffs. Whatever the Goon Squad gets will probably not even cover their legal fees, let alone whatever they spent on OnlyFans. The only path forward for the plaintiffs in this case is to name specific cases of fraud or consumer abuse. This means that claims will be subject to individual state consumer laws as opposed to federal RICO charges. So here's the one thing you should do. Most of the named agencies in the case are either incorporated or headquartered in California. Whether you're an agency or a creator, if you are based in California, seriously consider moving your business entity. I mentioned Dubai before, and while that's great, even moving your LLC to a business-friendly US state like Texas, Wyoming, or Florida, and actually operating from there, removes you from the jurisdiction of California's specific aggressive consumer protection laws. You are now officially caught up on the status of the lawsuit. As I predicted, the Goon Squad have been left holding a massive L, and it seems that for the time being, the OFM industry will move on business as usual. If you made it to the end, comment a topic you'd like me to cover in my next video. And if you haven't already liked the video and subscribed to the channel, I strongly recommend you do so now, because I push out new content every single week, plus live streams. If you're interested in hiring me as a consultant, be sure to click that first link in the description. Click the second link for your free copy of my OnlyFans brand blueprint workbook. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.